With Frank Ragnow's retirement, do the Vikings now have the best O-line in the NFC North? That and the rest of your questions on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. My hashtag everydayers sound off in the comments or wherever you can. I appreciate you all so very much. Today is Town Hall Tuesday. That means I'm answering your questions, and later I will respond to your hot takes. You had many, many hot takes, so we're actually going to probably do more hot takes than questions today. But I do have some questions. The first one comes from Shadowflame, who asks, with Frank Ragnow retiring and the loss of Kevin Zeitler for the Lions, would you consider the Vikings' new offensive line the best in the division? I think you have to do a little bit of projecting to have this take, but if you want to go like down the line, I would say if you want to just call the tackles a wash, let's not get into that argument, right? Let's just say, okay, Darisaw and Sewell, Taylor Decker and Brian O'Neill just cancel each other out. But then you look at the interiors, right? Ryan Kelly, the Lions are likely starting a rookie. It sounds like in camp, the guy who's been taking snaps the ones is Tate Ratledge, who played guard in college. He was actually one of my favorite interior linemen in the whole class. So, or at least for the value that and then he ends up going in the second round, which is kind of where I thought, wow, you could get him in the third. I'd actually be pretty happy to get him in the second. So I think that was a reasonable pick, even though I think it was a reach by most of the consensus things. I liked the pick, but you're now moving positions. That's always going to be a little bit spooky. But we'll see if that works out. You still have Graham Glasgow there, and you have Christian Mahogany, who's a second-year player from day 3 last year. So you're projecting 2 out of 3 spots there, right? And with the Vikings, I think you're projecting 1 spot for sure on the interior, and that's Donovan Jackson. Yeah, it's a first-round pick. You probably have higher expectations for him than you have for either of those guys on the interior, but you're still projecting. But I don't know how much projecting you're doing for Will Fries or Ryan Kelly. You just have to hope that they stay healthy. So I think the answer can be like, if healthy, then yes. But I'm not like 100% confident to just be like, yes, it absolutely is. I think 1 for 1, I'm taking the Vikings group now that Frank Ragnow is gone. But boy, one injury thing that is like not even unlucky, but just is not actively lucky, and we're having a whole different conversation. But what I will say about this Frank Ragnow thing, I think it does genuinely impact the Vikings insofar as that might have been the next most important guy on the Lions offense after Jared Goff. I don't think I know I'm on Ross St. Brown, Jameson Williams, and you're excited about these guys, but what they had going on that O-line was the lifeblood of that team, and the lifeblood of that O-line was Frank Ragnow. He wasn't even 30 and retired. Injuries, not a thing that seemed to catch the Lions too much by surprise. But they didn't go out and get their center, right? They drafted a guard and moved him. So we'll see how it works for them, but that could really, really, really impact things for the Lions in a way that is more than the impact you would typically get from the loss of a center. I think he was particularly important to him, although I do think that centers are just a really important position and probably should be considered as here's my hot take, that center is the most important position on the O-line. I know everybody, the left tackle makes all the money. The right tackle makes all the money pretty much too. But center is probably the biggest market inefficiency we have in football, where you should just go out, splurge on your center, because you could get the best center in the league for relative, still a good ROI. But anyways, we'll see how that works out with the Lions. I am going to tentatively say yes, but there's going to be some asterisks and ifs on there where I can't be 100% comfortable with it. EL says, in your opinion, should Jalen Redmond be in the long-term plans for the Vikings? Steve Palazzolo just predicted him as a breakout player, but possibly for another team after the Vikings FA moves. Yeah. So a couple people asked about this. There must have been some real hype bait stuff with Jalen Redmond. So I have a Patreon video. If you would like to watch it, patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL. Might have to do some scrolling back to last year, but Redmond is also had a great Everyman Series entry from last year, if you want to listen to that. Plug. But my take on him is like, yeah, I like him. And my guess is Steve Palazzolo just found his tape for the first time and probably wasn't paying attention at all to him during the season because this was pretty apparent in the season. He was playing at like a high level. He was like playing good ball. He's still probably fifth in the room after your kind of chief starting three and Taki Taimani. Taki Taimani had the job last year. Jalen Redmond only got in because Taimani was hurt a bunch. So that'll be like a camp competition, I think, for like that sort of fourth DT job. And I don't know what Tyrion Ingram Dawkins' job will be. I think he's a different part of the rotation. I don't think that like Taimani and Redmond are already kind of stepping on each other for a role. So there's that. And then of course you have Levi Drake Rodriguez there as well. That's a pretty crowded thing, that like nose tackle job. So what the role is going to be depends on how those camp competitions shake out. And as much as I like Jalen Redmond, Taki was playing great too. That's a tough competition, and I think those guys will sort of become a redundancy with one another. And what might happen is that they have such a good preseason with each other that like they both make the team, and it just ends up being one of those things where we just can't bring ourselves to cut either of these guys. But you could also see a situation where if one of them falters, if one of them sort of cools down a little bit, they end up getting cut and becoming a good player for another team. Could totally happen. I think the Vikings are cutting someone from the D tackle room that gets picked up on waivers. Like I think that will happen. Just sort of by the math of it all, somebody rosterable is getting cut from the team. It's a pretty good problem to have. But yes, Jalen Redmond has a lot of juice. He's got a very aggressive, like he will shoot up a gap. Maybe if I recall, he sometimes got himself out of position a little bit, or just, wasn't quite the athlete that can really make him a starter. And I think sometimes when you come in and you make plays like that, you're fresh legs. So good job being fresh legs. But when you talk about giving them more of a role, the return is diminishing right now. I think he's probably at where he's the most efficient use, which is as a spell guy. And whether that's with the Vikings or somebody else after this year, he could probably have the kind of career where he plays a year here, a year there, and really is a guy that gets a sack a year, right? Gets a TFL here or there, maybe sometimes, and just puts on a bunch of different jerseys over time while he does it. But that's pretty cool for a guy coming out of the UFL. That's sort of what it's for. Jack from St. Paul says, listening to Nate Tice's show, and he was talking about a scheme thing that has become more popular in the Mike McDonald / Ravens lineage. The idea is playing more big dime, which gives more run support to a dime package because you have a large safety / linebacker type playing the nickel, but it doesn't give us as much in coverage as having a traditional linebacker there. Okay, so by big dime, you mean, is it 3-3 safeties and corners? Or is that would be a dime, but that sounds like maybe a 4 safety thing. I don't know. But he said, okay, the question continues. It got me thinking about the role of Jeff Okudah. Okudah has been pretty bad in coverage, but he's actually been an elite tackler and run defender. With Flores having a knack for identifying player strengths and leaning into them, do you think he might see a role for Okudah as an early / running down nickel defender? I think the problems that Okudah has in coverage would be exacerbated in the slot. You don't get to just be a run defender. The offense isn't going to tell you which ones are the run plays. So if you're going to put him in the nickel, eventually he's going to have to like cover a shifty slot guy. Like that is not going to be the kind of thing you can like man coverage about. But obviously in that role as well, a lot of times you blitz, a lot of times you're backing off into zones and stuff. And Okudah will probably have to do all that stuff anyways because formations condense. So you'll be the guy off the edge. But as a run defender and tackler, the outside corner has really important responsibilities there. So you don't need to move him into the nickel spot to like take advantage of that. He can just be that as a possible outside corner. However, I think the Vikings 6 DB package, so their dime package, is probably 3 safeties, 3 corners still, with Harrison Smith, Josh Metellus, and Theo Jackson as the safeties. And then Josh Metellus playing that hybrid linebacker role. He seems kind of perfect for that sort of stuff. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the Nate Tice thing that you're talking about, the segment that you're talking about, but I'm going to guess if it's like Ravensy stuff, Metellus is probably the Vikings guy that's like perfect for the role that you're talking about. And then you would have your Isaiah Rodgers, your Mekhi Blackmans, your Byron Murphys, and then maybe Jeff Okudah sprinkling in there sometimes as your like actual true blue cornerbacks. I've got a couple more questions, and then we might just go right into the hot takes as well, because I've got a lot of hot takes coming up on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by LinkedIn. Look, if you own a small business, you don't get to stop working at 5 p.m. like everybody else. You got to keep thinking about that, especially when it comes to hiring. Your business is always on your mind, and LinkedIn helps do some of that work for you so that when you clock out, LinkedIn can clock in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free. Share it with your network and get qualified candidates all in one place. And it's working for you around the clock. It doesn't matter when someone logs into LinkedIn, they are going to see your job. Here's how it works. You post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. You change your profile picture to add the hashtag hiring frame. It's like a purple frame that says I'm hiring, and it doubles your reach to qualified candidates. And then 72% of small businesses say that doing this on LinkedIn has helped them find high quality hires. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Moving on here to Town Hall Tuesday on the Locked On Vikings podcast. The next one comes from Overly Optimistic, who says, who do you think has a better chance for a comeback and breakout season, Jeff Okudah or Rondale Moore? I find myself thinking too optimistically for both of them, so can you please help me temper my expectations? Okay, between the two of them, better chance for comeback and breakout, I will say Rondale Moore, because I think if Rondale Moore stays healthy, there is something to be said for that. And I think the primary knock on his career has been health. When he was healthy, he was a contributing member of the offense, right? He wasn't the focal point like he was at Purdue, but he is a contributing member of the offense. Jeff Okudah, when healthy, has already been relegated to backup status. Also, I think there's an easier path. If Jeff Okudah is a pretty good corner, he still has to contend with Mekhi Blackmon, Isaiah Rodgers, Byron Murphy, and there's going to be a playing time thing, and you're going to be on a short leash because you're not really the pole position guy. But with Rondale Moore, if he is like good and exciting and fun, even if you're excited about Jalen Nailor and or Ty Felton, like you'll find a way to get that guy on the field. And the wide receivers rotate more than corners rotate usually. So I would say there's like an easier path there. Plus it's just, okay, can he stay healthy? Versus Jeff Okudah, who needs to like prove something that we have not seen from him yet. He has to go play better football than we're used to seeing him play. I feel like that's a tougher ask than asking someone to just get a little lucky injury-wise. But in terms of talking you off the ledge for your Mr. Overly Optimistic, yeah, both of these guys are probably more like depth players. Rondale Moore's knee sounds really bad. It was never reported what the nature of the knee injury was, what ligaments it was, just that it was really bad. We're going on almost a year since the injury, because the injury happened in camp last year. So we're like getting close to a calendar year here. It's been 10 months and he's still not back. It's probably a really, really rough knee injury. And not only do you have to wonder what kind of athlete you're getting on the other side of that, but is that going to stay healthy? All kinds of question marks. Like there's so many reasons to just like maybe temper on Rondale Moore, even though I liked the signing. I think he can be a cool, interesting new element, but it's just one of those things where you don't exist until you do to me. Like, it could be great, but get healthy first, and then I'll actually talk about your impact on the offense, because right now your impact is more on the IR sheet. As for Okudah, I'm sorry. He's just been a bad cornerback for a few years. If he starts the whole season because like injury requires it and it's a necessity, we are going to be really frustrated by that, bar none. Maybe he comes in and he plays way better ball because the Vikings hide their corners. But like, if you thought the Vikings had to hide their corners with Stephon Gilmore and Shaq Griffin, Jeff Okudah is like up to turbo having to hide that corner. You do not want that dude one-on-one with Jamar Chase in week 3. Like that is a nightmare situation. Do not give me that. Not to mention the Lions in particular can probably make short work of that guy, which will feel extra bad for him, obviously. All the Jays asks, if both Jalen Ramsey and Jair Alexander got cut and were up for signing a 1-year cornerback deal with the Vikings, who would you rather have? This is hard for me to answer, not because it's like a particularly difficult choice, I bet, but because I am not personally that familiar with the game of either of those two guys at this point in their careers. They are both turbo cooked. I mean, they are both like brisket cooked, but I don't know which one's less cooked. Jair Alexander seems to have had a lot of trouble staying healthy. Jalen Ramsey has had plenty of injuries over his career, but I think is more just a little bit cooked. So I guess by that same logic as the Rondale Moore thing, I'm picking Jair Alexander, right? Let's just trust the medical staff and hope you get lucky. But I do think overall Jalen Ramsey is a better corner right now. So it's kind of hard to say no to that. So I'll go with that. I'll go with Jalen Ramsey. David asks, this is the last question we have today, and then we'll go to the hot takes. Who is the early favorite for Mr. Mankato? Really need to come up with a different term since it's been 7 years since they were last in Mankato. You know, I don't agree with that part. I think calling it Mr. Mankato is still really cute. It harkens back to where they used to be, right? It would be like calling him Mr. Winter Park. It's not Winter Park anymore, but come on, like that's a part of the like lore of the team. So I think it's okay to still call him Mr. Mankato as an homage to where the Vikings used to the more humble traditions that the Vikings used to have before their schwanky TCO thing. As for that, my bet here is going to be whoever wins the punt returner job gets Mr. Mankato. There's going to be someone random. It could be Ty Felton. It could be someone like Tim Jones or Javier Thomas is probably going to, it could be it could be an undrafted rookie like Silas Bolden. Anybody who wins the punt returner job or like gets a punt return touchdown is going to get it. Otherwise, I would say probably the odds-on favorite is Ty Felton, which I think is stupid because third rounders getting Mr. Mankato. Like the whole point of Mr. Mankato is that it's supposed to be like the unsung camp hero, the second team preseason stud, the Tristan Jackson kind of guy. But it has to be like a first or second year player too. So I could, and that's why I'm saying like the punt returner, but I think it's been like Mekhi Blackman won it a couple years ago. Like third rounders have won it before, like win it pretty often when there is a third rounder that's a skill player. That's usually the kind of guy who would get Mr. Mankato. So Ty Felton's probably the odds-on favorite if he wins the punt returner job. I think that's a shoe-in. And then if he doesn't, I think whoever beats him for it is the one that gets the punt returner job. So let's grab a couple hot takes before we move on to segment 3, which will be more hot takes. But the first one comes from Tep, who says JJ McCarthy's haircut is a clear sign that he's an unserious athlete and is doomed to a disastrous NFL career. Get with the times, man. I'm sorry, you're wrong on this one. That's just how Gen Zers do their hair. It's just the style that's in for the young people right now. Okay. It's not a style you're going to see on me. I can't pull that off. But Tep continues to say he must either start sporting a faux hawk or better yet, shave his head bald. Okay. Look, as a fellow, blonde hair, blue eye kind of guy, I have thoughts on, the idea of sporting a faux hawk. You will never beat the Ellen DeGeneres allegations. Trust me on that. And shaving your head bald also may raise allegations that you will never beat. Okay. As a blonde hair, blue eyed guy, there's a little bit of a connotation with gentlemen like us deciding to shave their head bald. Okay. We don't want to do that. There's certain messages, that could potentially send on accident that you do not intend. Okay. This is not a thing. I'll tell you a story. One time in college, I, did shave my head bald. It was for a charity thing. Okay. It was like a cancer solidarity deal. So my roommates and I all shaved our heads bald. We all filmed it. We made a big deal out of it. We had a lot of fun. And boy, I fielded some allegations that week. And eventually just started wearing a beanie. And then people said that I just looked like a sickly cancer patient. So, we'll leave you to think about that for just a second, and we'll move on to the rest of these next on Locked On Vikings. Moving on here with Town Hall Tuesday on the Locked On Vikings podcast. We're on to your hot takes with that I will react to anonymously. So if you have a super, super spicy opinion, but you don't want to put your name next to it, it's too hot, That's what I'm here for. Okay. So go to the Google form in the show notes and please give me your hot takes about the Minnesota Vikings. The next one comes from Will the Real Slim Shady Please Stand Up. Speaking of allegations that a blonde hair white kid may have to field. He says the Vikings will finish the season as the division leader, Packers last, and Bears, not the Lions, are the second team in the division to win a playoff game with the Vikings. Okay, wait. So you have it Vikings, Bears, Lions, Packers. Okay, pretty hot take. That's does FanDuel have those up yet? So FanDuel will at some point, if it's going to be like last year, at some point FanDuel will allow you to bet on specific division finishes. Oh, they do have it up. That particular division finish with Minnesota Vikings, Chicago Bears, oh my, Detroit Lions, Green Bay Packers is plus 2,400. Plus 2,400 on that. So that's a pretty good bold prediction. And then you say the Bears, but not the Lions, are the second team in the division to win a playoff game with the Vikings. My friend, you may have forgotten, I believe it was 1994. The Bears did come into the Metrodome and shellac the Vikings at home in a playoff game. It was a huge nightmare. I believe that was how one of the Warren Moon seasons ended. I don't think that was the Jim McMahon year because it wasn't like a revenge game narrative. But I'm too lazy to look it up right now. Hamlet says Dallas Turner will have the second most snaps other than Cashman as an off-ball linebacker. That would be kind of crazy. He says Gink was most effective as an edge. Dallas is developing into a versatile piece. Flo needs to get Jonathan Grenard, Gink, and Dallas on the same field as often as possible, and this is the way that he does it. So you're saying that Dallas Turner will replace Ivan Pace. This is a take that I've heard a couple other times. You're not alone here on this hot take, Hamlet. It's like a fairly popular, unpopular opinion, you know? It's a trendy, unpopular opinion. And I do think that it's just sort of way overthinking things. I think we forgot that Ivan Pace is actually a pretty good player. And when Ivan Pace is on, that defense really hums. It's just that he's still, second year. He's going into his third year. There's still coverage stuff that you want to, there's like, it's like a coverage discipline thing. It's like a control deal, just being able to like stop, break down, make the proper decisions, not overrun things. But he still makes all kinds of splashy plays. And I think that, I don't know, Tyler's gotten into too many of your heads. He wants to get rid of Ivan Pace. I just never will. I think just rotating these guys, I mean, they're going to rotate it. It doesn't matter who's there. He's going to rotate, right? If it was Patrick Jones and Jihad Ward and Dallas Turner didn't exist, those guys would still have rotated in, right? So, and you're still going to see rotation from whoever makes the team. I mean, Gabe Murphy could rotate in plenty too, right? They'll get their snaps. I got dang old Hank, man. Says, Anthony Richardson is the most misunderstood player in the league and will become KOC's Taysom Hill type player in less than 2 seasons. KOC loved Anthony Richardson. I can vouch for that. But obviously a lot has changed. It just has not worked out with the Colts at all. Maybe I was just wrong about that. So I believed in him coming out, and I still do believe in him. I did. The talent was undeniable, and I think he was a little bit like, it wasn't surprising to me that he started week 1. It was potentially unwise for him to start week 1, so maybe I have to take an L in that regard. Like in hindsight, it obviously didn't work. But he's still a very, very young player. I'm certainly not going to close the casket on his career at all. I don't think I can do that until you're at least like old enough to rent a car. Let's do that. He's 22, like 23 or something like that. Like maybe let's chill a little bit. Shadow Flame also had a hot take, and he says, under new leadership and whiz kid Grant Udinsky, Trevor Lawrence will be the most improved players in the NFL and will lead the Jaguars to the playoffs for the first time since 2022. Look, the NFC South is still soft as heck. The Texans are probably, they're the huge favorites, right, in this division. But yeah, plus 115, but Jaguars are plus 290. And honestly, we can again go to, FanDuel for guidance on this. The Jacksonville Jaguars playoff odds are plus 172. Like that's not even 3-1. So that's not the hottest take in the world. But just that Grant Udinsky will be good for Trevor Lawrence also is something I think is pretty agreeable on a Vikings podcast. So yeah, not the hottest one in the world. Shadow Flame, you can get hotter. And I know, Shadow Flame, that you are a long time question asker and everydayer. So I know that by putting that challenge to you, I can trust that it's going to yield good results. Johnny Scoop says, Justin Jefferson has more receiving touchdowns than Anthony Edwards has 30-point games by the trade deadline next season. As a result, Ant is traded by the Timberwolves. You guys are all going to have to help me out with this one. I have no idea what a normal amount of 30-point games by the trade deadline is. And I also have no idea Ant being traded. Also, which trade deadline are we talking about here? I guess it has to be the basketball trade deadline, because the football trade deadline is like 20 games into the season. I have no idea how to square this one away, but I hope that's a really hot take. I'll share it with you all anyways, but I don't really know enough about basketball. So let's just move on to confirmed Chris Kluwe jersey owner. Let's go. Friend of the pod. Says, the solution to the problems with the current kickoff is to move the kicker back 5 yards. Dudes can hoof it so far now that this would mean they would have an incentive to improve their range while allowing more returns in the immediate future as per the league's current priority. You know, I think I get where you're at, but I think you've got it all backwards. I think the way to because you're trying to reward skill with the kickers, right? And right now, in an NFL environment, kicking it through the back of the end zone is not skillful enough. Too many people can do that automatically. It's not skillful enough. So you want to make there, more of a skill gap from kicker to kicker. Okay, I get that. But I think precision and requiring precision is more difficult, and you just have to continually discourage the touchback, which is why Sam Schwartzstein, who initially invented what we now know as the dynamic kickoff for the XFL in 2020, he designed this. And the NFL just took it. But when he did it, he made the touchback come back to the 35 or the 40 for the exact reason that the NFL just moved it similarly. So I think the NFL probably should have just taken his idea in the first place. But unfortunately, and I've told Sam Schwartzstein this in his Twitter replies personally. Okay. So if he remembers me, he knows that I think this. Said I don't think the NFL wanted to admit that Sam Schwartzstein had a better idea than the NFL did, and therefore they needed to adopt this in a strange piecemeal transitionary way. Is this another hot take for you? I think the NFL, out of a sense of shame, came up with 2 really stupid ideas for the kickoff that just led to 4 million touchbacks. And if they had done this the way that Sam Schwartzstein designed it, just letter for letter, just took the rule, like they were supposed to, like Sam Schwartzstein was begging them to. And the whole XFL was like, yes, please take our ideas. We are a testing ground for you. If they had done that, the kickoff would have been a lot better, a lot faster, but at least we're better late than never. And I think that will solve the problem that I think you, Chris Kluwe, jersey owner, are trying to solve, which is it'll create more of a skill gap for kickers because touchbacks will be really bad. Precision will be important. You want prices right, rules, get closest to the 1 yard line without going over that you can. And that's so much harder. If you're really, really good at that, you're like an asset. And if you suck at that, you're going to get cut and you're going to get replaced. And like that becomes the barometer by which we measure kickoff specialists. Sticky Luke says the Vikings will, I was going to riff on that one, but I thought better of it. Says the Vikings will win a Super Bowl before Aaron Rodgers officially retires, but not before teams no longer want him on their roster. That essentially is the Vikings will win a Super Bowl this year, I think is your take, which is sufficiently hot. I appreciate it. So here's the thing. Okay. We got one from Disgruntled Burger Enjoyer and then a whole bunch about the DB situation that we're going to wrap out with, but I want to do this burger one first. Disgruntled Burger Enjoyer says putting the cheese inside the burger is the least optimal place for it. The role of the cheese is to tie together the remaining ingredients. It helps link the burger patty to the bun, preventing sliding and loss of toppings. As an olive branch, I offer you this. Why not both? More cheese, all of the cheese inside and out. You're right about that last part. That is how Juicy Lucy's are usually served. They usually do have cheese on the top. So this is not a zero-sum thing. But the cheese on the inside of a Juicy Lucy, it serves a different purpose. It's doing a different role. It's taking Jamal Adams and taking him out of the safety position and into the nickel corner position. You're asking him to do a different thing. It's now a different asset. The point of the cheese on the inside of the burger is to burn the absolute scalding crap out of your mouth. And that's what everybody pays for. Johannes says Mekhi Blackmon is going to be CB1 after this season. That's a very hot one. So scenario I think you have the best chance for here is one where Mekhi Blackmon wins the CB2 job this year, plays CB2 all year. You end up just playing sides, and then you're like debating who's CB1 because like Mekhi Blackmon has a good year. That's probably where you would call it CB1. Byron Murphy just signed a big contract. Him getting cut or traded after next year, super unlikely unless things go wrong with him on the field, I think. And the Vikings like want to get rid of him. It's just contract wise. If they are going to entertain him as like a tradable asset, it's just the plan would be to do it in a different year. So if you want to talk after this season, it probably just requires Mekhi Blackmon to play really well. But I don't think you're going to have a world where Mekhi Blackmon is like shadowing people and you just let Byron Murphy like, you know, roam the like play the other side or anything like that. Mekhi Blackmon and Byron Murphy and probably Isaiah Rodgers, maybe Okuda. I think the best case scenario for those other guys is that they play sides and that Byron Murphy just gets to play whatever side he's most comfortable with. John Jacob Jingleheimer McCarthy says the longer we wait, the more okay I am with the Vikings DB situation. While there were plenty of free agents and draft prospects, the availability of them and the amount that we passed on makes me feel that the front office and coaches have genuine confidence in what we have. I feel minded to trust the team on this one. Sure. I don't need to trust the team. I think, you know, I got this response a lot when I was doing all of my, like, I don't like the Ty Felton pick stuff. That was like, well, you know, don't you trust Keenan McCardle? Don't you trust Matt Daniels? It's like, I've heard that refrain before on acquisitions. You know what? Don't you trust Andre Patterson to say that DJ Wonnum is the next Danielle Hunter? Like, do I trust Andre Patterson generally? Yes. But do I think he's right here? No. It was pretty clearly wrong about that. And it bore out like exactly the way you would think if you were a reasonable person. So I think we can kind of step away from that stuff a little bit. Like we don't need to just like defer that the team can do no wrong in the offseason. That said, if you believe in Isaiah Rodgers, which I actually think he's a reasonable, I like the way Isaiah Rodgers played. I like his tape reasonably enough. And we'll see what we get from Mekhi Blackmon. It was a big problem last year. Corner was a problem last year, and it's not the one that they went and addressed. They addressed the trenches this offseason. I love that they did that, but let's not pretend it didn't come with a cost. And the last one comes from Dutch procrastinating student, not grad. Okay, not grad doesn't help you. Stop doing that. Stop procrastinating. Do your work. But Dutch procrastinating student says QB isn't actually the most important position group on this Vikings team. Woo-hoo! There it is. That's the kind of hot take we're looking for. It's a big, long paragraph, but essentially the crux of it is this is a really good team. Sam Darnold looked good. Clearly, you know, it's more important that this player or that player stays healthy, like Justin Jefferson, and J.J. McCarthy only needs to be a little bit good for the Vikings to be successful. Therefore, he's not there. If the QB sucks, we'll still win 10 games. I get it, but let me put it this way. And also a little bit of complaining that media will talk too much about quarterbacks and talk more about Brett Rippon than like Jeff Okuda. Well, I mean, that's just like two backups, right? I mean, Brett Rippon might not make he'll be QB3, but that's not inappropriate to me. I mean, quarterback is quarterback. It's just the way the sport is. It follows one guy, and that's just the way the sport is going to be forever. If you don't like that the media talks too much about quarterbacks, you might be in the wrong game here. But what I will say, to your point of quarterback not being that important because the supporting cast is so good, for one, to make up for one quarterback, you kind of need the whole rest of the team. So no single individual player is going to be more important than a quarterback. And we kind of saw that in 2023 where we had half the season without Justin Jefferson and the Vikings found ways. And we had half the season without Kirk Cousins and the Vikings did not find ways. They had like a brief Josh Dobbs moment and they ultimately went like 2-6. Like that didn't work. The offense looked okay, but the quarterback, especially Nick Mullins, still had the fatal interception flaw that ended up sealing games against Detroit a couple times. And then obviously the Jaren Hall disaster thing against the Packers. You kind of saw the limits to that there still has to be something reasonable. But the difference between a reasonable quarterback, like an okay quarterback, and call Sam Darnold an okay quarterback, and a really good one in this offense. Or shoot, call Kirk Cousins an okay quarterback, right? A good quarterback. and a great quarterback could be the difference between, Super Bowl and 9-8. And you can't really say that between the difference between having Jordan Addison or Jalen Naylor at wide receiver 2 is valuable, but it's not going to be as season defining nearly as QB will be. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll come back tomorrow with something fun. I have no idea what it'll be, but we'll figure it out. Love you. See you all tomorrow. And as always, Skol.